Welcome back to The Job Box, the podcast where we unpack everyday jobs with everyday people who work them. I'm your host, Casey Sosa, and today I have someone I've known for a while. His name is Cheung. We met a long time ago in Taiwan, and I ran into him the other day on the train as I was commuting to work, and we started talking about the podcast, and he was nice enough to donate some time to hang out here. So Aaron, he has a computer science degree from BYU, worked as a solutions engineer in the B2B SaaS industry for 5 years, then decided to take a leap of faith, buy a business in a completely different industry, and he now owns and operates Chelsea Reese, a whimsical women's dress brand. Well, what does that mean, whimsical?
It can mean a lot of different things, but there's a lot of overlapping categories. But in its simplest form for most people to understand, when you go to Disneyland, there's a group of people that love doing something called Disney bounding. And so it's essentially, they kind of dress up. They want to make it like a special experience. So they dress up in a way that makes them feel like a princess or in a fairy tale. In a sense, you could say that's kind of whimsical. Some people like to dress up like a witch, right? Or a fairy or something like that. Cosplay, go to Ren Fair. So we kind of cater and serve that niche.
Okay, cool. And you run Chelsea Reese with your wife.
Yeah. So I'm doing that full time. And then my wife currently is doing that part time.
Okay, gotcha. So I want to dive in a little deeper to it, but first tell me a little bit about how you began and where you came from.
I guess the first question everybody has is, how the heck is somebody like you doing something like this, right? So just to give a little bit of context, back in college, I was really inspired by the movie Iron Man, right? And I was like, oh man, I want to be Tony Stark. I want to be this tech billionaire entrepreneur that's inventing things. Even as a kid, I always wanted to be like an inventor. I liked fixing and tinkering with things. And so I had a very technical mind. And so while in college, the first thing I was aiming for as a freshman was electrical engineer. Then I went on my mission to Taiwan. That's where you and I were companions, right? And then coming back, I was just like, you know what? Maybe I want to be a little bit more, artistic. So I tried animation for a little bit. And this is kind of like where I'm feeling out what I want for myself, because I'm realizing very quickly, I'm like, I'm very smart, but not school smart, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness, like these people in engineering, they're just like, their math is, their calculus is super on top of it. And when I came back, I had to take like a refresher on calculus. And so I really quickly realized I wasn't keeping up with how smart everybody else was. So I tried animation for a little bit. And then I was just like, the pressures of just like, from my family, growing up in a very traditional Chinese conservative background, they're like, you got to be practical, right? And so they pushed me more towards the computer science side of things. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not great at this, the electrical engineering, computer engineering type of thing. So, but I was really good at programming. I was decently good at programming, like enough to survive BYU. And so that's kind of what I switched to. And so I did that quite a bit. And then I met a couple of guys that were building this robot for children with autism. And I remember as soon as I met those guys, I was just like, this is so fun. And so at BYU, there's like an entrepreneurship program. So I went and I got a scholarship to get paid to do this thing called Startup Ignition, to be able to learn about entrepreneurship. And then I got to work with these guys. The entrepreneurship program had a whole section and a whole building. It was this cool little room where there was like 3D printers in the back. There's like a table and computer working space for all these entrepreneurs to like get together. And so me and like these two other guys were building this robot. And then we went to a couple of competitions, and this is where I really got hooked. I think in total, we won like over 20 grand. So we did like international business competition, and, we're like pitching and doing and practicing, and we're doing interviews. And so we built out our first prototype. It's really cool. It was called Benny. It's like this little robot. So it had this like Android device in its face. So I programmed it. We had one that was doing the electronics and the actual physical printing of the robot. And then the other guy was the CEO, kind of leading everything, right? And so it was so fun. We used that money. We bought like 10 3D printers. So it was out of the CEO's garage, right? But it was just a really good learning experience of just kind of what I wanted to do.
And who doesn't want to print a bunch of like robots for their career, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's super fun. And obviously my grades didn't reflect that too kindly, obviously, because I was like, man, this is boring. I wasn't built to sit in a classroom and listen to people lecture me, like, and then regurgitate it on a on a test. It just wasn't my thing. But I always felt really stupid. I would say for most of growing up and throughout college, I'm like, man, I just feel so stupid because why is everybody else getting straight A's and then I'm over here getting like B's and C's all the time and I'm barely surviving. You know what I mean? It just didn't interest me all that much. But finally, when I graduated, it felt like a whole like a burden was lifted, like the expectation, like this, the freedom of finally like, all right, I can do my own thing, right? So did the regular thing. And then a friend got me into Observe Point. That was my first real big boy job. You know what I mean?
What's Observe Point?
It's a little bit technical, but let me try to put it in simple terms. They did a lot of like data governance. When you go on a website, there's tags that are on there, like whether it be like a Google tag or like an Adobe Analytics tag. There's things that's always tracking you on the internet. And so when you're going to the website, people want to be able to understand what your behavior is, right? What you click on, what your purchase behavior. So Adobe Analytics was founded, one of the founders was John Pastana. And John Pastana sold the company to Adobe, right? And so then his second company was Observe Point, which was essentially like, okay, we got the tags on for Adobe Analytics, but we need to check it, right? We need to double check to make sure that they're actually giving the right data. So there's this whole field called data governance. So that was my first big boy job coming out into the field of being a data governance consultant, right? In the field of B2B SaaS.
And so just for listeners who may not know what B2B SaaS is, that's just a business that sells software that a user can use. It's usually tied to a subscription. Anything else you want to say about like what B2B SaaS is?
Most times people are familiar with like, I buy a subscription service like Netflix or something, right? But businesses need that as well. But it's a lot more complex, like the whole sales cycle, because it's not selling to one person. You got to sell to like a whole group of people, right? So it's a whole complex situation. And so that's essentially the world of B2B SaaS.
So you finally felt like Iron Man.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I felt more like Iron Man when I was building the robots, right?
That's true.
I feel like this job was more like I needed to experience what it was like to be, at a regular job that my parents expected me to be at. You know what I mean? Just making money. And at this point, I still feel like I'm living the life path that they kind of threw me on, if that kind of makes sense. So I'm really grateful for Observe Point for really giving me the opportunity and training me in that field. And so after 2 years, I got promoted to be more on the sales side of things. And so that's where I kind of became a solutions engineer. Sometimes they call it sales engineer. Again, just to make it really simple, it's essentially like the nerd for for the salesperson. So in B2B SaaS, there's a whole complex sales cycle. Sometimes it takes years to complete a sales cycle, right? Depending on what software you're selling. They need kind of like a technical guy to come in and talk to their engineers and technical guys just to make sure that, it kind of fits well. You got to sell them from that point of view. So coming from a computer science background, I'm like, oh, it's a good way where I'm like, I'm not like the best programmer, right? But I have a lot of technical abilities and I can understand it from a technical point of view, like a data architecture, programming side of things.
Yeah, and you have the vocabulary to communicate with them.
Correct. So I thought it was a good promotion, right? So obviously with a great pay bump and a great title bump, right? I was just like, oh yeah, I'm a solutions engineer now. This was during, I think, COVID, right? So COVID happened and then essentially everything just shut down. We were all working from home and stuff like that. And then then I saw this opportunity where, what do they call it? The Great Resignation, right? It was that moment where everybody was like, resigning because they're like, oh, I don't need this job anymore. I can work remotely if you're making me come back. And so everyone was quitting. They were trying to find better things, right? And I was just like, oh, I see this great opportunity. And so that's where I moved to my next company, Amplitude, which was amazing company, right? They're based out in San Francisco. And man, they treated me so well because they were paying around $150K. So like solutions engineering as a job is great, right? And so they're paying me a ton of money. They're flying me out to different places, like doing different shows and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
What were they flying you out for? Were there like conferences or?
Most of the time they were flying me out for to do like trainings. So essentially they're just like, everyone come together. We're going to do big trainings. We're going to have a nice hotel. Like they flew us out to San Diego to essentially just have fun, right? And just do trainings and really kind of tell us where to go and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh yeah, I feel so fancy. They're flying me out and stuff. So there's like random events and things like that that happen. So
Gotcha. So then what brought you from Amplitude to what you're doing now?
after some time, if I'm being honest with myself, I felt like I was still living my parents' dreams in life of being this successful, engineer person in, Silicon Valley, like a tech person or whatever, right? But yeah, truth be told, I feel like I will powered my way through a lot of my life, especially that. And I was starting to become now that I have money to actually check up on my mental health. I'm like, I literally don't know anything about myself. I don't have any hobbies that I'm doing. I just work and I watch Netflix. I work and then I'm tired, go to sleep, and I just repeat just to live for the next vacation. You know what I mean? And so it was great. Like, don't get me wrong. I really appreciate all the money that I was able to get to be able to go on, 2 international vacations a year. You know what I mean? But then it's just like right back to the same thing. And I'm like, maybe what I need to do is like FIRE, which is like, what is that? Financially independent, retire early, right? I was like, okay,
Mm,
fine, make as much money as I possibly can, and then just retire early, right? So yeah, I was like, all right, if that's, I guess that's my life. But it got to a point where I feel like, at the time, it felt like really like anhedonia and depression. So I was just, oh man, what is going on? So I like went to go see some psychiatrists and some doctors and then I'm like I just feel more numb and then I found this is when I found out I'm like, oh, I have ADHD too, right? So they're like testing me for different things. I'm like, oh wow, my entire life I'm like, now I realize why why I couldn't pay attention in class, because I have ADHD. I just can't sit down for that long. And so they gave me Adderall and all this kind of stuff, and I thought it would help me get better, right? It's like I can't pay attention anymore to the meetings that I'm in, right? And my performance was starting to wane, and my managers
right.
were starting to catch up. They're like, dude, what's going on, man? And I just can't pay attention. I'm just like, this is just dumb. And so I tried the drugs and it just felt like it got like 30% better. But I'm like, is this just going to be my life that I just feel like dull and drained all the time? And then I just watch Netflix and then I just repeat. I'm like, there has to be more to life than this. And so, so lucky for me, several years ago, I was able to finally find the right life coach teacher to be able to help me connect back to my spirit, my soul, like what made me feel alive, right? And so, yeah, I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I what made me really feel alive was when I was an entrepreneur, when I was back in college, right? And I was just like, yeah, I think my dream was always to be an entrepreneur, to always own my own business. And the issue with me is that I felt like I was stupid my entire life, right? I was like, there's something wrong with me. I'm like, why can't I just do this job? Like, I'm getting paid a lot. It just doesn't make any sense. And then, but what I'm realizing, the older, like now that I've done all this work and this healing, I'm like realizing actually, I feel like every person has their own gift, and it's being able to tap into that without fear and without caring about what other people think or say. I got to the point where I was so depressed where I was going to commit suicide, right? I was like, I cannot live like this. Like there, and it felt like there was no other way. So I was like, okay, well, if my options are pretty much suicide or go take a leap of faith, which seemed very scary at the time, right? To go do my own business. Well, then I might as well do it. You know what I mean? Because what does money mean anyways, right? I've been trying since that point to like use less of my brain and use more of my heart. And my heart was like, just take that leap of faith. So I went ahead, like beginning end of 2024. I was like, okay, I'm gonna start looking for a business to buy, because I started watching a whole bunch of videos on like um buying boring businesses and stuff like that. I was just like, oh, that might be like a good in between, right? Where it's just like I could be my own business, but it's like a little bit stable because it's boring, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So I bought this masterclass. I paid like 10K to do it, and there's a lot of really good people, right? So I trained there for a couple months to like learn like, okay, the cash flow, the expenses, and things to look out for in a boring business, and then how to actually source it, right? Because that alone is a business, right? Because you got to actually source a pipeline, because people aren't going to be like, oh, I have a great business, I'm going to give it to you, right? So you actually had to go look. So I spent the next like 6 months. I went to a whole bunch of like networking events. So I joined like BNI, there's random things on Facebook where people just like met up and stuff like that.
Did you learn about these networking events through this masterclass that you?
Yeah. They had like recommendations of things. Like there's a lot. They don't say like do this specifically, but they're like, hey, great way to source pipeline for businesses that you want to buy is go to networking events. So I looked at all the ones nearby, and so BNI was a pretty big one around here, and so I joined them for several months. And I actually interviewed a whole bunch of like I just went to a whole bunch of different ones. I'm like, okay, let's give this a shot, right? And those are like pretty hardworking people. So I did a whole bunch of things with them. Several months after like working hard, sourcing the pipeline, the CFO of my current company, she brought me a deal, right? She was like, hey, check this out. And man, long story short, this is not a boring business, to let you know. And this was not what they trained me to do. But again, I was following my heart here. And this is what I'm trying to say. Like, this is a wild adventure because it's not like I disregarded all the training that I got, right? But again, my heart was like, well, there's this deal here. And this, because usually boring businesses, they usually have been around for like more than 20 years, right? It's run by somebody who's really old. He's ready to retire. He's like, hey, I'm ready to pass this down. It's very stable, very boring. It's not going to grow a lot. But then when this came along, right, this was dying. And that's why she wanted to sell, because the previous owner just didn't have the resources. She was burnt out. She didn't have the capability. But again, in my own cocky mind, I'm just like, oh man, I could turn this around. But I'll tell you this, like looking back, again, hindsight is 2020. But when she brought me the deal and I interviewed the employees of this company at the time, they were all super passionate. The boring businesses that I was looking at the time were like asphalt, concrete, window washing, things like that, right? And I try to interview the people. None of the employees, all of them hated their jobs. That was the difficult part of the job. It was steady, but it was like everybody hated their lives, and it was hard to keep people motivated and employed at this company that they didn't want to be at.
Yeah.
And so then when I saw Chelsea Reese, when I interviewed all the people, my goodness, some of the girls, like they got to a point where a lot of the girls, they weren't even getting paid for it because of that, but they loved the company so much that they're like, oh, we want this to keep going. So they weren't even getting paid. And then they were just so passionate and they loved what they did. And so I was like, oh my goodness, like looking at it, I feel like that's what drew me to it. It was like the stark difference from boring, stable business. Everybody hated it. All the employees hated it, to like dying, but everybody was passionate about it. And I was like, you know what? There's an operator here that really believes in this, and all the employees really believe in this. So you know what? Let's take a leap of faith here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like it took a lot of patience and like trial and error to even get to that point. And then once you saw it, you just like knew it.
Yeah. And maybe it was God guiding me at the time that I didn't know. But like I said, it was just like, well, I feel like I should do this. I mean, was it a little bit impulsive? Maybe, right? But I was new. I didn't know. And I had a lot of trust in these people that were telling me like what was going on. And so I was like, okay, you know what? This feels right. Man, usually the sales should be over like a couple months, right? But this was like over a couple weeks, several weeks, you know what I mean? So it was really fast. But anyways, I bought it in November of 2024. So now it's like I'm in it. And then the operator, I promoted her to CEO. I'm like, okay, you go ahead and run this, right? And I'm going to, in the background, do what I do best, which like do more of the technical stuff. So I'm gonna focus on building out the website, right? And because they had like this really janky website, so I was like, okay, I'll build it. So I hired out a team. I'll focus on this. You just run the rest of it, right? Like you do all the pretty like content and run the social media and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, over some time, it started becoming very apparent that the employees were a little bit in over their head. I trusted them a little bit too much in what they were selling. So they kind of oversold their abilities and their experience and what we could experience about turning this thing around and how much money they actually needed, right? So at first they were just like, oh yeah, 100K, we'll turn this thing around by April. You know what I mean? And then it was like, okay, I'm trusting you on this. I'll just work on this part. You guys go focus on getting that back to where it needs to be, right? Even the CFO was like, yeah, if we do this, do that, here are our projections. Like it wasn't like, oh yeah, we'll do it. Like there was numbers, like they crunched it and everything. And I even had to pitch the old bank that was lending them the money, like on the plan, and they were convinced. So I was like, oh yeah, we're good, right? It's not completely fair to blame it all on them. I mean, truthfully, on myself, because I'm a new business owner. There were tariffs at the time, when Trump came into office, there were tariffs, a lot of uncertainty. So it's just like things that you can't control. So you can't really be like, oh, it was that person's fault. That's just business, right? By April, I was like, well, you promised me we'd be profitable by now. And we've lost more money than we've ever. We were at this point, we were
No.
losing 30K every single month, right?
Oh man.
I was like, okay, well, obviously somebody lied. Somebody oversold their ability. Somebody didn't know what was going on, right? And so that's why I was just like, well, that was me as a naive business owner. And it was a good learning experience now looking back at it. But at the time I was like pulling my hair out. I was like, what is going on? The whole
Yeah,
business is on
yeah.
fire. What have I done? You know, I should have just
So
listened to my parents.
so wait, so then how did you kind of pull it back together? Is that currently what's happening, or is that like
So essentially what happened was we got to a point where by April, I was like, God, I need to step in here as CEO. But that didn't really happen because I was still like learning. And truthfully, I was scared to because I know nothing about dresses. I know nothing about e-commerce or this industry or manufacturing. I know nothing. That was where I went wrong. I should have in the beginning not focused so much on this website. I should have been learning. And so that's where I would say this is my fault, right? I should have been learning all these things, but I didn't. And it was my money, right? So after April, I was tracking everything. I was interviewing everybody, how everybody was using their time, but I didn't step in fully till probably like June, right? I think it was a becoming moment for me because I was like, I followed my heart and I felt like at the time this was the most difficult thing. And I felt like I made the most horrible mistake because I've lost so much money. I felt like so behind because at the time, like money was king. Money was my God, right? It was like the more money that you had, the more people you could just change people's beliefs just like that, right? And everybody looked up to you. But now I'm just the opposite, right? Now I'm like, everyone's going to think I'm dumb. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking about all this judgment. And so I had to cry so many times in the middle of the night. I was just like, what have I done? How do I turn this thing around? Right. And so I think this is where my connection with God really grew because, and I think this is important, right? Because I probably was like around 5 or 6 years ago, I left the church and now I'm on my own faith journey. So this was like a moment for me to like really connect with God, a very becoming moment. And so looking at it is kind of like a blessing in disguise, right? Of just like really connecting with God to help me out of this thing. I say, okay, you guys have one more chance. You guys have one more chance to turn this around. And they're like, yeah, we'll do it. I'm like, to be profitable, you need to make X amount of money, right? They didn't even make like a fraction of it, right? And then I was just like, well, that's confirmation. Like I gave it as long as I could for you guys, and you guys couldn't do it. So I finally made the difficult decisions. I just had to let pretty much all of them go, right? And it was very scary because it's like, well, now that they're gone, it's all on me. I have to run a woman's whimsical dress business. I didn't even go to Disneyland all that often. I went as a kid. You know what I mean? I'm not that like if it were between Universal Studios and Disneyland, I would go to Universal Studios. You know what I mean? I'm just like, what have I done? Like, and then there's like unemployment claims. There's like tax things that we need to do. It's just like, oh my goodness, everything, right? But I felt confident. I was just like, you know what, man, I'm so stubborn. I'm like, I'm going to make this work. Like, and I think this is where grit really comes in. And I think this is where people go wrong. It's at the end of the day, this business didn't allow me to quit when it got hard. It's like, I feel like in any other situation, like I could quit and not learn lessons, but I was just like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna stick with it. I'm gonna bring this as far as I possibly could, even though it's so difficult, right? And so I humbled myself, try to connect with God a little bit more. And it was just like, let's build this thing up brick by brick from the bottom. You know what I mean? Learn the whole business, like fix everything, right? I'm telling you, everything was a mess. Like the warehouse, like they didn't even get the weights right. The clothing was like thrown everywhere. I couldn't find anything, but it was so stressful. I was just like, oh my goodness. And so anyways, had to work through all of that. But finally I was like, okay. So I brought in another partner, my friend from college. So we both are doing this, right? And so we slowly kind of fixed up everything. We cleaned up the warehouse, cleaned up the website, cleaned up, right? Again, we're not the best. And we're starting from ground zero. And I'm telling you, the entire community after we fired oh my god, I should be on like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives or something, man, with how much drama that we went through. I'm like, the entire community, because the previous employees started like posting things of just like, well, this guy fired, just like saying not great things. But it was very strengthening for me to realize, like, you know what, social media ain't nothing. Like before, like people say things and I would take it so personally, but now I'm just like you don't have to worry about what people say on social media. They'll forget about it in several weeks. You know what I mean? That made me that much stronger. But anyways, I got to a point where I was like, okay, we're rebuilding, and this is where we're at right now, right? So we hired several like people like part-time, like kind of like contractor work, like freelancer type work, like to help us out with some of like the UGC management, influencer management, some of the email marketing. So we have a few people, but mostly full-time at least. It's just me, my partner, kind of like working in this business. And there was this whole like identity crisis of just like, oh my goodness, like this is a woman's brand. I can never show my face, right? I can never like tell people like, hey, it's actually me, guys, behind the scenes, right? And I always felt like I had to hide. But you know, like looking at it, I'm just like, you know what? At the end of the day, I feel like as long as I'm doing my best and I'm trying to provide as much value as possible, right? And I really do. I really do still believe in the values of just when I first bought it, which is we want to empower women. We want to empower the feminine. We want people to feel like they have the permission to be whimsical and magical without feeling judged. And a message of inclusivity where women who are plus size can find a dress that they love and feel beautiful in because, you know, instead of feeling shamed for what they're doing, right? So there's a lot of like really good messages. There's parts of the business that I'm not the best at. I have my own strengths, right? And so being in touch with my feminine part, I'm getting better, but I'm still not the best. And so I think that's where the journey is. So that's why I kind of like had my
Totally.
wife kind of like help out with that. I'm trying to find other people, you know, be like the creative director, like help us with the social media. Like I'm trying to bring in women that are more in tune with that type of message to be able to help with that. I'm trying to say, okay, you know what? I'll stay in my lane. I'll try to do the best I can with what I can to serve this community, which is provide more affordable dresses to these women. And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, that's great. Like I feel like one of the coolest pieces of advice I got from one of my mentors a while back is recognize the expertise of other people in the room and you bring them on to fill in those gaps. That's one of the best things a leader can do is notice the expertise of other people.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. And I think that's a lesson that I'm still learning because I'm trying to overcome my trust issues, if that makes sense. Like before
Yeah, yeah.
I was too trusting. And then now I swung all the way on the other side and now I'm not trusting enough. Like, I'm doing this
Mhm.
all myself. Right. So I agree with you. Now it's a point of just like, you know what, identifying talent of saying, okay, here are my weak points and finding that balance between, you know what, I need to keep people accountable. I need to set strong KPIs but also give people the room to be able to thrive in that area is kind of where I'm at right now. So yeah.
Well, I wanted to kind of dive in now that you're at a point where like you feel like you have more of an equilibrium with your business partner and, you know, some other people coming on board. This is the next section of my podcast. I'm calling it The Good, the Bad, and the Break Room. And I have a little audio for it. You ready?
Okay.
The Good, the Bad, and the Break Room.
I love it. Love it.
Thank you. So, good and the good, the bad, and the break room. What is the good? You've kind of already gone through some of that, but distilled into just a couple of sentences. What's the good about the job? What's the bad? And what's the break room, which is like the culture, but also like vacations, things like that.
As an entrepreneur and a business owner, I feel like we'll start with the bad first, right? I feel like I'm still trying to get used to the instability of things, right? Like not knowing how to pay for something. It's a lot. It's a big burden that I feel like a lot of people who work, you know, W2, W9 jobs or whatever, just 40-hour work weeks, they don't understand, right? That's a big burden, like not being able to pay people, not being able to pay vendors, and where's that money going to come out? What if this fails, right? Like that risk side of things. That instability, I just feel like is just something that will always be there. So I feel like if that's not your cup of tea, that could be bad, right? And that's something I'm still getting used to, like adjusting accordingly. I would say in terms of the good, um, if you want a rocket ship of growth, of personal development, spiritual development, of strengthening your character, I don't know if there is any better way to get there but through what I went through, if that kind of makes sense. And that comes with the instability, that comes with the risk, that comes with the not knowing, right? It's trailblazing, right? And so but that's for me personally. I'm like, wow, the amount of personal growth that I've gone through is just through the roof, and my connection to God. That's the good. And if we're talking about the break room, I would say for the most part, and I'm changing the culture right now, right? In the past, it was like the hustle culture of like, until we make a ton of money, nobody gets to rest. Like it's just work, work, work until you die, right? And that was burning me out. And so I've changed it, I've reduced it, and now I'm focused more on balance. I'm focused more on like, you know what? A third of the time of your energy for yourself, for rest, and then a third of the time for work, right? And that's how I'm trying to balance the culture of the business that I'm building right now. And so a lot of times, at least for me right now, because again, it's just there's not a lot of people in the company, but I'm trying to build more of a culture of just more with trust, right? Of just, you know what, here's the expectations, and we care about you as a human being. And when money is important, but love and compassion and patience and character building is more important. And that's what I'm trying to instill into the current company. And so in terms of fun, right? I again, we don't have much, but my partner and I have gone to several trips, but for business related things. And I think those two things can go hand in hand. Like we've been to Magic, sourcing at Magic several times down in Vegas. We flew out to Tex World out in, I think it was in LA. I'll be flying to Hong Kong next week to work with a whole bunch of manufacturers. And so there's a lot of like traveling things that we want to do too. But also just, you know, outside of that, right? Because we don't have like full-time employees. We
Hmm.
work with a lot of like independent contractors or like freelancers, like models, right? Or UGC
Yeah.
creators. And it's nice because now I'm trying to do a little bit more focus on Utah, because before it's more like Disney World, Disneyland, Orlando type area. But now I'm like, hey, let's focus here a little bit more. So we're holding more events, and having that connection, it feels better. And it's great because I feel like there's hustle culture is very masculine, right? But in this business that we're in, and this is where I'm starting to learn, like there is this feminine side of things where it's like softer, more connected. Like I care more about you emotionally, spiritually as like a human being. And it's like providing the snacks, providing the you know, the drinks, and just talking about people's day instead of just like how much money did I save today? How much time did I save today? You know, that was me, and I'm changing that, if that kind of makes sense. So
Yeah. That's great. You talked a little bit earlier about how, you know, you when you went to your life coach, you started kind of rediscovering some things that like personal hobbies or like things outside of work. Do you feel like there is like much of a work-life balance? And if so, like what do you do outside of work?
yeah, great question. So now that I'm rediscovering myself, I realize I like fighting a lot, actually, because I have a lot of pent up testosterone, anger, or whatever, and it kind of needs to just come out. And so I realized that a lot of the frustration, anger, I was just channeling it towards this business. I'm like, I need a healthier outlet. So I actually discovered that jujitsu and Muay Thai. So I've been going to the one nearby. I've been going to that several times a week, and it's been amazing. And so it's super fun. I'm exhausted by the end of it, but I feel great. Like I feel stronger. I feel more confident than I've ever been before because I'm doing that. I've also um do fun things like I play poker with my friends once in a while. I love strategy games, right? And so I have one friend. He's got like two cupboards just full of like board games. We played this game called Scythe. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. It's like a thick game. It costs several $100s, but it's like a super, you know, it's like a deeper strategy game. And I'm like, oh, this is so fun. You know what I mean?
Sounds like you're a risk guy or
Yeah, like a little
like
more
risk
complicated
and
risk type of a
yeah.
game, right? But yeah, and I'm trying to be out in nature a lot more. So I think going out on walks regularly every day for at least 30 minutes and just sitting on my mat or going to yoga is a great thing. So I do sauna and cold plunge, right? I'm trying to do that a little bit more as well. So that's just where I'm at. So feel a lot
Cool.
happier, I'll tell you that.
I love that. That's awesome that you've been kind of rediscovering yourself. You talked a little bit about this already, but this next section I call the bacon, and I have this little, you know,
Nice.
yeah. So
Gotta get the bacon.
so yeah, tell me about it. What's the pay like where you're at now?
Yeah, if we're talking about my my current job as the business owner, it's 0. But I feel like I look at it very differently than other people. I haven't paid myself at all because I'm reinvesting the money, if that makes sense, right? And sometimes it's like we lose money sometimes, so it's not, I'm never getting a steady paycheck, and I'm not paying myself currently, or my partner for that matter. I own 80, he owns 20, and the goal is we have the option to sell the company in it'll be 4 years. So in total is 5, but 4 years from now, we want to make 3.2 million. And that I calculated that would be enough for me to just retire very comfortably, and then choose to be able to serve and give back to the community more. So I'm very lucky because my wife has a full-time job and allows me to do this full-time. But now we're kind of in a moment where we're just like, maybe that might change a little bit. We can have her come in. And honestly, we were like, okay, if that happens and we're all paying ourselves, like 75K is more than enough. So we don't even look at it from like I need to pay myself. It's just like, okay, what do we need to just meet our basic needs? So like eat out once a week, buy groceries, pay the mortgage that we have, and it's not that much. It really is not. And so 75K is more than enough to meet my needs and however long it takes to be able to get this business off the ground.
Cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And especially seeing it, like you being so transparent about that too, because I think a lot of people see entrepreneurship as like, oh, you're just going to make the big bucks, man. Like,
Yeah.
but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of growth. It takes hours on end of getting it right in order to make it to that point. So that's really cool that you're so transparent about where you're at now and where you hope it gets. This next section I call Note to Self. So looking back into the mind of little Aaron Cheung,
Mm-hmm.
right when you graduated high school, at the point where you could potentially join the job market, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah. Oh, man. If I were to give like 17, 18-year-old Aaron advice right now, like in today's market, is what you're saying. It's funny because this is very opposite from what my conservative Asian parents would recommend. Honestly, if you want me to tell you the truth, I feel like traditional education is done for. Just with the advent of how quickly everything is moving, I feel like now that I've been an entrepreneur, I'm realizing that the most important life skill is adaptability. And I don't think they teach that enough in school. I believe now times are shifted to where the technology is growing so fast where it just can't keep up anymore. And education is like the slowest thing to move. So if I were to give advice to my old self, honestly, it's trust your heart. It's, you know what? Because some people are built for a 9 to 5 job, like a stable job, and more power to you because we need those people. But people like me, like if I'm giving advice to myself, I know myself. I'm like, dude, you're not meant to sit in a cubicle. You're not meant to being lectured at. Maybe you could do both. I don't know. Like I know you still got your mom and dad like breathing down your neck, but I think you got to focus on what you really want, which is probably to be an entrepreneur, and whatever form that takes, at least always have something like that. I wouldn't necessarily say don't go to college or don't go to, because I think there's a lot of importance of learning of like that career ladder and how the corporate America works and everything like that. So I'm saying there's a lot of value there. And I honestly would recommend most people, I would say 90% of people should go to college, but there are also people who, now trades like the physical trades, like electricians and plumbers and things like that. I feel like those are very valuable work. And I don't think anybody should look down on you because you have that. Because now look, now AI is taking over the white collar jobs. And now everyone's like, oh, I wish I would have done that. You know what I mean? And so that's why I'm like, maybe the most important
Yeah.
skill to learn is not regurgitate, but maybe just to adapt to what the new environment is, whatever that looks like. You know what I mean?
So how does younger you adapt to this environment?
In this specific situation, right, of knowing what I know in this time period to my younger self, knowing myself, I would say, screw college, don't go to college, go train under an entrepreneur like me and learn AI as much as you possibly can. Because I feel like very soon there's going to be companies with just several people running like entire enterprises that today worth billions of dollars, right? Still try to socialize because I think you're going to be missing out on some other important human things like socializing, but find another outlet for that.
One of the main benefits of school is having that social life and being able to network. And I know that I gained a really great network through college, but again, there were so many things that weren't necessary for my career growth that happened in my college experience. And if I could go back, same thing, I would say like some of this stuff isn't needed, but there were certain pieces of it. And if you can find a way to network like you did in college without the college experience, then that's amazing.
Yeah, totally.
The last part of this is what I call the future commute. Here's my little audio for it. Ready? Yeah,
That was the loudest one.
That's me. That's me commuting to work, or maybe you.
In your Lambo.
So your future commute, what is it? Like where do you go from here?
My vision is selling Chelsea Reese in 4 years from now for the 3.2 mil, being able to retire and r- relax for a little bit and kind of meditate on what I want to do in life. I am very lucky. I'm realizing how lucky we are to be in. Again, many people might not see it this way. I feel very privileged and blessed to be in a country where it gave me K to 12 practically for free. You know what I mean? Go to college, being raised by a conservative Asian family that could put me through college, teach me a lot of the principles of, the LDS church to make me a, productive member of society. And so I feel like in the future, I want to give back. I've been given a lot. And so once we do sell this company, I would love to be able to change the system for the better in some way, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I'm realizing how much energy it takes. So I want to help shift people from this victim mentality of like, oh, woe is me. Like this stuff is happening to me. The rich and the billionaires are screwing us over, right? To a like high agency, like, hey, let's all work together to make this better, whatever that looks like, right? And so I feel like entrepreneurship is a great avenue for that, right?
I mean, I'm really inspired by that. And I think a lot of other people will really resonate with the desire to build a business, sell it, and then give back to society in some way. And I hope that we can have you back on the podcast later on in your career to kind of follow up on, what ended up happening there and what what you've done with the business. So
I really hope you don't find me the next time we bump into each other. You don't see me on the side of the street begging for money. So let's hope that scenario doesn't happen.
getting off the train and you're just
Yeah,
sitting there. Oh
just
man.
on the side of the road. You're like, yeah, you're not coming back on this podcast.
Well, maybe you will. Maybe you will come back on the podcast anyway
Maybe I
and be like,
will.
all right, tell everyone how not to
What
fail.
not to do. What
Yeah.
not to do.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. My last question for you is, are you hiring? I know you said that you don't really have any full-time employees right now, but you collaborate with a lot of people. So how can
Yeah.
people get involved?
So right now, the easiest way, like definitely for right now, if you are in the whimsical fairy tale princess core space of like being a model or creating UGC or influencing, we're always looking for people to collaborate there. Also, yeah, we very soon, I would say probably, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months, we'll be starting to hire again. We right now, this Chelsea Reese is what we want to empower women, right? And so there's a large portion of this business that requires that feminine energy. So if you feel like you resonate with our company values, what we stand for, then yeah, we definitely encourage you to apply. And probably in the next 2 or 3 months, we'll probably start hiring full-time employees to be able to help us with like the warehouse, with our social media, with our content, with all of that type of stuff. So if that's what you're interested in, we'd invite you to apply. So
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you being so open and sharing so much of your journey to get here. And I wish you the best moving forward.
yeah, well, thank you so much, Casey, for having me on the show. So